Andreas Harsono is the Indonesia researcher for Human Rights Watch, and he joins me now in the studio. Great to have you with us tonight. Andreas, how credible do you think these accounts are that people smugglers were paid to take refugees back to Indonesia?
Well, I happen to know the Fairfax correspondent, Jewel Topsail, as well as her editors back in Melbourne, Michael Bucklard, Tom Allard. I know them very well. They are credible journalists, and they told them that this story is credible. I trust them.
Where are the people smugglers themselves? Are they being investigated by authorities?
They are now detained in a police detention center on Rote Island. It is a small island south of West Timor. They are still being questioned by the police in
So
Indonesia.
do you believe the Indonesian authorities have the will to get to the bottom of the story?
Well, I don't know. Indonesian police is not the most ideal police force in the world, but you know, Indonesia-Australia relation is quite tricky nowadays. Surveillance, telephone, and then the death penalty, and now, before that last month, Rohingya refugees, and now this issue. The police and the government in Jakarta might be intrigued to go down to the bottom of this issue because of this tit-for-tat thing.
That's a great point that you make about this, the sort of tricky position the two countries find themselves in at the moment. From a relationship point of view, Tony Abbott keeps insisting it is an operational matter, therefore he does not have to answer these questions. How will that go down with Joko Widodo?
Well, to be frank, he is not popular in Jakarta. I mean, in the palace in Jakarta. He is not seen as, you know, not the old Australian that they used to know. In the past, Australia was seen as a beacon, the oldest democracy in the region. People learned to speak, people like me, we learned to speak English.
It was aspirational to have a relationship with Australia.
Well, of course, they expect an Australia that they used to know. Human rights, democracy, civil liberties.
So from Indonesia's point of view, that Australia is disappearing?
The standing is getting lower and lower. The respect is I think, not declining.
Diminishing. What's the response been? I mean, it's obviously a very big story here in Indonesia. What has the response been outside of political circles on the streets?
The big story about this particular case is not about the smuggler itself, which is, you know, from a legal point of view, it is all in a total disregard of both Australia and Indonesia responsibility to help refugees. But the big story in Indonesian media is how the Australian media react to this accusation.
So in what regard? Are they surprised that people are concerned, or?
Well, in Indonesia it is common for government or even people to bribe. And they thought that in Australia they don't do this kind of thing.
We wouldn't do it the other way around when we take the high mighty road.
No, why it is the Australian who bribed?
So, Andreas, to that point, I mean, this is true because Australia puts itself above this. There have been reports that, of course, that it wasn't border protection, that it might have happened from the security agencies, in which case it would be, you know, in the national interest of the country to keep it quiet, or to perhaps do things to keep the policy of minimising the flow of refugees to Australia.
Well, in Indonesia, the common public perception is have a pity on them. You know, they are in the high seas, weeks for months. There are gruesome stories about they beat one against another, or they drink their own urine to survive in all those boats. So the public sentiment is have a pity.
Which Indonesian fishermen have demonstrated by bringing in these Rohingya Muslims despite authorities
pressing
trying
the
not to.
government to switch their policy to 180 degree, change their policy. Initially push the boat, and then, you know, helping all those refugees to be on the Indonesian shores, give them food, give them clothes, and let them stay at least for the next 1 year while being processed, their application.
And hopefully reallocated elsewhere. What are your thoughts about this notion that this could provide a new business model, so people smugglers will set off with the hopes of maybe receiving bribes on the high seas?
You know, the term in Indonesia is Tony Abbott like to say, Prime Minister Tony Abbott like to say, don't put the sugar, on the table. Jangan taruh gula di atas meja. Don't put the sugar on the table because the smugglers will go in.
The honey and the bees will come.
Now what? If this accusation is true, he did not do what he preached.
Always good to get your thoughts. Thanks, Andreas.